Looks like Jeff, you're ready to go.
Okay, we're a minority, obviously, but hopefully our voice counts too. Keep questions on it, please. And we're not all in agreement, so we want to be fair, and I'm going to go to them first, because if there's somebody that disagrees, I want to make sure that their view is articulated.
Okay.
We had, on the first one, ironically, we had a 3/4 to 1/4 split on eliminating the test completely. Our rationale is we're not convinced that it's actually a law. It's more of a Title I funding problem, and so we'd like to have that looked into. And also believe that standardization actually ultimately hurts the kids, especially at that young age, or the collective approach. It'd be to save money and bureaucracy, and there are some indicators, some organizations that are indicating that standardized tests do not actually measure the quality, educational quality. And then also there was one, the teachers' pay is based on the assessment. So those that are supporting eliminating them even have different reasons for that. So did I reflect that? Okay. And then the computer one, if we were going to do this, we're kind of split between the CBT and the CAT. So I don't know if there was any other rationale than what's already been stated. Did you guys want to add to that? Kind of similar to the rest.
In other words, efficiency here versus better
Instant scoring.
Yeah.
CBT has an effect on the student. Is better, I think. So that was one of the then paper and pencil. Yeah. Okay, and then high school content. We are okay with that. We just want to make sure that there's an opt-out that's not only in the Century Code, but is promoted by the ECAS. So we want to make sure that we're clear on that it needs to be, fairly promoted and opt-out. And then high school assessment. We kind of, if we were going to do one, we're more okay in the upper grades of having the standardized tests because of they're molded more stable at that age. They're not pigeonholed as much as younger kids can be. So we did have, I think, complete agreement. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, that we would go with ACT as well, like everybody else. And then added to that would be 10th, 11th, and an option paid by the state for 12th grade as well. So did I reflect you guys okay?
That was to retake or take,
Yeah.
take the ACT ahead of time, kind of like the pretest, taking the 11th for count, and retaking the 12th at their option if they want to try.
If they want to.
That's available now.
They take ACT or
Okay, great. ACT, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. And then,
Those anybody needs to do it.
oh yeah, and then by the way, just to note that it was, is it state paid?
State pays for first aid.
First.
Yeah, but not the third.
Senior.
Second or third, that's up to
Okay,
you.
so we're wanting to recommend that the state pays for the 12th grade as
The
well.
retest?
Yeah, and part of that rationale is that if you get a 24, you get a $6,000 scholarship. That wasn't my note, but did I reflect that correctly?
And it goes
That's
up.
good.
Okay. All right. Science tests. This one's a little bit controversial, so don't throw rocks at me.
I thought eliminating testing was kind of controversial.
I appreciate your respect. I can handle a tough question. I just can't handle a rock. But I'm a preacher now. I used to be a teacher, so I'm the one that put some of this in.
Okay.
I'll own it. But the elimination is for different reasons on the science test. Some because, like others have already said, it's already in the ACT. And so, not that we know anything about that, but if that would pass the peer review, then, or whatever. So we just figured why we do it. Some of the reasons I think there's agreement on, but I'll own this one because I brought it up. I think that the state it would help the state stay out of the church state. Highly volatile issues that come with science, like evolution, the climate science that's out there, some think is false science and others don't. I think it's better to leave that to the local schools, because if the state takes that away from the local schools, I think we're just vulnerable to unnecessary problems that we don't need. So I would vote for, and I don't know if there's agreement on this. I think there was some, not completely across. I'm just being careful that I don't hog the show, but that's some of our thoughts. We're split on that though. I could agree, because there's definitely some that think that we should still take these science tests. It's still part of the core, and so it's a valid category, just like math and reading, right? Okay. Then the last one, perhaps the most controversial, is we are split 2-2 on build or buy, and that rationale, I won't have to go into detail. I think it's been explained, but on the build side, it's not necessarily that we've even made a final conclusion yet, but we would like to challenge the assumptions that are being made, like that it's that difficult. That may be true, but it may not be true as well. And of course, the cost. There's assumptions being made that it's tremendously high price. We don't even know what the numbers are. We haven't compared them. So all we're saying is, let's take a look. And if it comes back, we were wrong, that's fine. But when we say build, when I went to lunch, I noticed Licky, this is Jeff now, I noticed Licky, you can buy a custom home from build, and it'll cost. That's not the type of customizing we're talking about, buying a home from Licky. We're talking about building our own home that would be like one of those. And that's where we believe that there is going to be a lower cost and higher quality for kids. Okay.
And then the buy would be kind of the opposite of that.
The buy would be the opposite, that just don't agree with the rationale with us. And to be fair, the buy, I think, does anybody want to speak to that? I think there are similar reasons to everybody else. That it's cheaper, it's, yeah.
For the whole ability for it to be norm.
The ability for it to be normed as well, yes. Right.
Okay. Questions or comments for the,
I have, but fundamentally, the questioning, help to understand how the new ESSA law that was passed in the lower chamber and signed into law in December says clearly students must test 3 through 8 in one high school. And how can that is the law. How can there be clear? Yes, the consequence for not following the law is money, but it still is clearly in the law that has been filed with the Federal Register. So our legislators pass a law that says our schools must be in session 179 days each year of instruction with our students. That is the law.
Yeah.
The only consequence that the legislature has provided is if schools don't go 179 days, then they lose funding from the state. So it's the consequence that is tied to money. Yes, it's their only claw, it's their only teeth, but it still doesn't negate the fact that it is law. And so, yes, the clawback, so I think we fundamentally have to realize that it was in the old law of ESEA and it's in the new law.
Yeah, all we're doing is challenging that assumption. It's not a personal challenge to you.
Oh, I know.
I don't think that's correct.
Oh, and I'm not.
I read on this too, and there are groups way on the other side of me on this that are even saying the same thing. So it's not constitutional. One thing that the federal government, as has been stated in the ESSA, the DOE cannot regulate states.
Right, but it wasn't the DOE that passed that
Just
law.
an example, though.
Right,
I'm just saying.
So are you
It's
saying that our
challengeable.
Congress doesn't have the authority to create
Correct.
that law?
Correct.
So you guys are disputing Senator Hoeven, Kevin Kramer,
Correct.
and all of their colleagues. Okay.
Yeah, and we're
that
not
helps
the
me
only
understand.
ones doing
So,
that, by the way. This isn't
No,
just
no.
two
That
rogue
helps.
people.
Yeah, that helps me understand, and I would encourage you to reach out to Senator Hoeven, Congressman Kramer.
I just talked to Kramer in the entryway at noon.
Good.
Yeah, but that's all I'm
So you're
saying.
talking having the option of opt-out. That's what it is.
No, we're talking about eliminating
And just eliminate.
the
Okay.
3 through 8, the first one.
Got it.
Okay. That helps me a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Thank you.
So what, not that I'm promoting the opt-out, but if a person said, listen, we want to eliminate, and the answer is that's likely not to occur, the opt-out, how do you perceive the opt-out? Isn't that sort of like for your child, it isn't going to...
Well, parents should know it, first of all, and they should be told by the state DPI, in my opinion, that they can do that. So they don't feel the inherent pressure that comes with a state mandate.
But that's, to me, that's like, so we have a federal IRS bill. And that's like a federal law saying I need to pay my taxes. And so I have a law on the books that says you have to do this. I don't know that Commissioner Rauschenberger can tell me, well, we're not really sure that the federal government has the authority to tax you, so you have the option to opt out.
Well, I thought there was an opt-out already in.
No, there's no opt-out.
Okay, that needs to be looked into too, because I'm hearing different things on that as well. So, and
Some states
in
have
person, I could be wrong.
Some states have it,
Yeah.
but the new ESSA law does not have an opt-out.
Right, but some states have opt-out.
On what? On the
So where
3
does
for
that
8?
protect in North Dakota?
On the 3 for 8.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought
North
we did.
Dakota allows
Okay.
for opt-outs. How does that?
So parents have the
Take the test.
parents have the right to refuse
That's what I'm
their
talking
child's
about.
right,
Not
test.
opt-out,
That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
Yeah, every parent.
Parents
has
should
the-
know that. I'm just saying the state should promote that to the parents and tell them.
But it's not an authority that I'm only able to do what the legislature gives me authority to do. And the legislature has not given the department the authority to say our kids can opt out. They defeated that bill.
We recommend.
The opt-in.
We recommend that changes.
Yeah, and-
There's
and
also a 95% participation rate standard too. So the state's sitting here going, we've got to have so many of our students take the test.
Well,
Otherwise, the feds are going to say you don't have enough people taking the test to have the results be accurate. So there's this dilemma
Yeah.
that the state is in, saying we need numbers that are going to justify the results, and parents are saying we want to be able to bail out if we don't want to take the
Like
test.
it
So
says in here, it's a recommendation.
And
I
I
understand.
think
Right.
Jeff's point, if I'm hearing this correctly, you want that to change. And you think that, and that's fine.
First of all,
and we can-
I want to find out if it's true. Okay, and then yes, I recommend it change. That'd be my view on the opt-out question.
Okay, and that goes through the legislative process, and then if that changes, then they give the direction to the department to be able to do that.
If it's true that there is not an opt-out option for parents, yes, then it would need to change legislatively. But if there already is an opt-out option, then I don't know why we can't tell parents about the opt-out option.
Well, the opt-out option was defeated in the legislature.
So there is no opt-out.
Right, there's a refusal, there's a refusal.
It's just different words.
Okay, so then I need to be educated, and I appreciate that.
What's the difference? I'm sorry,
What's the difference between
Well,
what's the
You
difference
said,
between
Jeff.
refusal and opt-out?
I think some states are just silent, at least the states that I've worked with. Some of them are just silent on the opt-out issue. In other words, they don't have a law that says you can do it, nor do they say you can't do it. They're just silent. So in other words, if an individual student says, I don't want to take this test, the districts are going, we're not going to force this individual student to do it. But if it became a movement, now they're in danger of not having enough students be tested, and then they have to address it.
And from
So
your level, Joe, so you have a test, and you're requiring all of your students to take this test for a grade.
Okay.
If your superintendent gave your parents the opt-out, your superintendent is giving them permission to not show up for your class that day to take that test. But your superintendent isn't doing that. Your superintendent and principal are saying, you need to show up for class to take Mr. Chang's test. Every parent inherently has their God-given right to tell their child, I don't care about Mr. Chang's test. I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's meaningful. I don't think it's accurate. You don't have to go. And every parent has that right without receiving permission from the superintendent, the state.
But they make the consequence.
What's
Right.
that?
They have to be constant.
But unfortunately, in this case, the school district takes the consequences of the parents opting out, not
Right,
children and parents.
and most likely, if you only, and there could be trickle down in your classroom too. If you only have one of your 20 kids showing up for this test that you've developed, there would probably be, most likely, some questions asked of you about what's going on. So that's kind of the same thing. So there isn't, opt-out gives permission. Refusal is inherently a parent's right that they should remain and should be intact.
But
for every-
potentially, there's another issue here. We've talked about the state scholarship. Is a student, or should a student, be eligible for that state scholarship because they're opting out of the test.
No,
They don't have a score.
how would they get it?
Right.
It's not
So
fair.
what I'm saying is, I mean, by opting out, I mean, you could be, some parents could be doing more damage to their kids than they.
That's the parents' choice.
That's,
Yeah, but it's the kid that pays the consequence.
Well,
If that kid is
maybe
gonna go to
not.
college.
Maybe not. I mean, you're assuming there's a consequence there.
Yeah, I am.
And that's okay. You have your right to your opinion.
I do.
I think there's a challenge in learning how to take assessments too, and I think that starts at an early age. And I think when you get going along, I don't think many students that opt out or don't take tests in high school have a better chance when they get to college of performing well because they don't know how to take assessments. I had LD students and I taught a Kansas strategy on how to take tests. And it specifically taught students that didn't read the little nuances how to do that. And I think there's a skill in it. It's learned at an early age. And I think that opting out or not having your child test is detrimental to them in the future as they go along. You're going to have to take a driver's test someday if you want to drive. Can't opt out of that.
We're just talking about state standardized tests here. We're not talking about all testing. And there are plenty of examples that are on the other side of that argument that blow that out of the water too. So it's not that
and I think
clear
you need
cut.
to look at it that these are just recommendations and just things that are being brought up. One of the things that was brought up at our table as far as the testing, it's not about my kids are. I refuse for my kids to take the test, and it has nothing to do with. I don't want them to learn how to take a test, but it's what has come with the test. I am completely against a lot of the data and stuff that is being taken, and that's my reason. It's not because I don't want them to test, and yes, my kid will take a driver's test. He's still learning how to test. I think testing is important. I think, and you know what? I want this $6,000 for a scholarship, but I'm willing to not have those data points and lose that $6,000 and find it another way. But that's a personal choice. And I mean, I don't think that people who are refusing the test is because they don't want to test and they don't want their kid to learn to test. My kid, when he goes to college, you know what? Every kid that goes to college is going to have a real awakening, unless they came from legacy. And, you know, feel like that. Anyway,
I just
legacy.
wanted to understand why the parent group was against testing, because did that help a little bit?
Mine is data. It's data.
You're forced to get
the smarter balance.
Certain number of 95%, and if you have a whole bunch of people opt out, you've already lost AYC before you start.
Right. And I don't want the schools failing. We can't, my kids went to a school at AYP. Simile, how many years did Simile not need AYP? 8? 8. My kids still went there. I don't want the schools failing. I think as a parent, and I can speak for other parents that I am close with, there is some data that should be collected so we can learn and make our kids, move forward and become, who they want to be. But when it starts crossing the line of mental health and behavior issues and little Susie had sex in 4th grade, that's a little much for this mom.
Where is that being collected?
Well, it was just a throw out near.
That is
Well,
not,
Okay,
said
so I'll take that back on Susie. Okay, Susie's okay. But there are a lot of mental health questions that are being asked, and there are, in our testing, there are tag marks that are doing, the psychometrics. It's within, I'll pull it out right here. But it's the extra data that is driving parents crazy.
And I think there is some of that on the NAEP. There are some demographic type questions, but I don't think there are very many state assessments that are dabbling around in that. But I think the NAEP assessment, which is a little controversial, some people are saying, I want my kid answering whether they're in a single parent home or not. understandably so. But I don't think that's a state issue. I think that's more of a NAEP issue at grades 4 and 8. We need to wind up. The good news about our meeting today is it's not like school. You don't have to stay until 4. If we're done a little early, we can leave early, which we will likely do today. I want to see if there's any kind of closing comments, thoughts about any of the report outs there, or any final thoughts before we kind of wind up and head home.
Yeah, just a note on that. One of the things I have been noticing is that a lot of the parents, teachers, administrators, and so forth use Common Core, for example, when in actuality you have a whole bunch of different things. NAEP, MAPS, you've got the Smarter Balance test. The testing is separate from the standards. The curriculum is separate from the standards. The text material is totally separate. And in some cases, a lot of the arguments or objections that I have seen in different places have had to do with, for example, the teaching materials that actually don't, they're grouped with the assessment, when in actuality they're separate items. And this has really made a lot of it a vocabulary issue and discussion issue about what are you really talking about. Because you may be answering the question based on standards, but the question was really on text material. Or the question may have been on the assessment, but you're answering based on the curriculum. And so this is creating a lot of misdialogue, I think.
Okay. If you have individual people at your table that have the readable report, if you could make sure that Patty gets that. Kirsten, do you have any closing comments or thoughts for the group before we wind up today?
I appreciate the work. I think it was another productive day. I agree with Rick that I think we're coming closer to some direction, some framework for an RFP content. I agree that this is not a simple issue. It's one, the hip bone is connected to the knee bone, or the leg bone is connected to the knee bone, to the ankle bone. So it's a very complex issue, and thank you for, again, devoting a day to helping us navigate those waters.
Any final thoughts or comments before we wind up today? Lisa, thank you for making the effort to be with us. That was helpful to have your comments after lunch. So, it was very good. So thanks, folks. Safe travel home, and we'll see you in March.
Chris Creamer. Her husband is Kevin.
We need to pick up, make sure Patty gets a copy of the table discussion.
U.S. Congressman.